The night of my birthday, I stood on the porch, holding a suitcase, begging my parents not to kick me out. They looked at me and closed the door. That moment shattered me, but I found a way to shatter them back, and what happened next will make you cry, and maybe make you question what family really means. I always thought birthdays were supposed to be special. You know, the one day of the year when you feel celebrated, loved, seen. But mine turned into the day my life shattered. I remember waking up that morning with a strange kind of hope. It was my 18th birthday, the day you're supposed to feel grown up, free, like the whole world is waiting for you. I lay there for a few moments in my bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if maybe today would be different. Maybe today my parents would actually remember. Growing up, birthdays weren't a big deal in my house. We didn't do parties with balloons or cakes with candles. Most of the time, it was just a quick, happy birthday at breakfast and maybe a store-bought cupcake. But deep down, I always longed for more. Not the gifts, not the attention, just the feeling that I mattered, that someone cared enough to make me feel special, even for a moment. So when I walked into the kitchen that morning, I held on to a fragile kind of hope. I smelled coffee brewing, heard the clinking of dishes, saw my parents sitting at the table. But they didn't look up. They didn't smile. They didn't even say a word. I stood there, frozen, waiting. Maybe they were saving the surprise for later, I told myself. Maybe they had something planned. But then my mom looked up, not with warmth, not with excitement, but with a cold, flat stare. "We need to talk," she said. My heart sank. She gestured for me to sit, and I did, my hands trembling under the table. My father leaned forward, his face stern, his voice sharper than I'd ever heard. "You're 18 now," he said. "It's time you take responsibility for your own life. You've been living under this roof long enough. We've decided it's time for you to move out." At first, I thought I misheard him. I laughed nervously, waiting for the punchline, but there was none. Their faces were stone, serious, unforgiving. "Wait, what?" I stammered. "Today, you're kicking me out." "Today?" "Don't be dramatic," my mother snapped. "We've done our part raising you. Now it's your turn to stand on your own 2 feet. That's what adulthood means." The room tilted. My chest tightened. My 18th birthday, the day I thought might finally be different, was the day they chose to throw me away. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to ask them how they could do this to me. But all I could do was sit there in stunned silence as the world I knew slipped out from under me. The rest of that morning is a blur. I remember going to my room, pulling out a duffel bag and shoving clothes inside with shaking hands. Every shirt, every pair of jeans felt like proof that I wasn't wanted anymore. My parents didn't come to check on me. They didn't ask if I needed help. They just waited in the living room like it was any other day. No cake, no candles, no happy birthday. When I finally walked out with my bag slung over my shoulder, I looked back one last time, hoping, praying, that one of them would stop me, that they'd break, that they'd show me some sign of love. But they didn't. They just watched. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was done. As I stepped out into the world, homeless on the very day I became an adult, I made a silent promise to myself. I would never forget this. And one day, I would make them understand what it felt like to be abandoned. The air outside felt different that day. Colder. Sharper. Maybe it was just me. Maybe it was just the way pain can make the world seem harsher. I stood on the front steps with my duffel bag cutting into my shoulder, staring at the street like it was a foreign country. I had no plan, no place to go. Neighbors passed by, some glancing curiously, but no one stopped. I wanted to disappear, to sink into the ground so no one would see the 18-year-old who just got thrown out by his own parents. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my best friend. "Happy birthday, man! Big 18! We gotta celebrate tonight!" I stared at the screen until the words blurred. How could I explain? How could I tell him that while everyone else turned 18 with cake and laughter and freedom, I had turned 18 with nothing but a bag and broken trust? I started walking. My legs carried me aimlessly, my mind spinning. I thought about sleeping at the bus station. I thought about knocking on my friend's door. But pride, stupid pride, kept me from asking anyone for help. If my own parents didn't want me, why would anyone else? Hours passed. The sun sank lower. The shadows stretched longer. My stomach growled, but I didn't care. I sat on a park bench, hugging my bag to my chest, watching families walk by, kids holding balloons, parents laughing, couples sharing ice cream. Every smile was a knife twisting deeper. I remembered birthdays when I was little. Back then, even if they weren't perfect, there was still something. I remembered being 5 years old, blowing out candles on a cake my grandmother made. I remembered being 10, when my dad actually took me to the arcade, just the two of us. I remembered the way I used to think things would get better when I was older. But now I was older, and it wasn't better, it was worse. By the time night fell, I was shaking, not just from the chill, but from the emptiness gnawing inside me. I finally swallowed my pride and called my friend. His voice was full of energy when he picked up, but it faltered the moment he heard mine. Within an hour, he came to get me. He didn't ask many questions. He just let me crash on his couch, handed me a blanket, and told me I could stay as long as I needed. I wanted to thank him, but the words stuck in my throat. Gratitude and humiliation tangled together until I couldn't speak. That night, lying there on his couch, I stared at the ceiling, wide awake. The sounds of his house were so different from mine, warm, alive, filled with a kind of quiet comfort I had never known. But instead of peace, all I felt was rage. Rage at my parents for discarding me. Rage at myself for still wishing they would call, apologize, tell me it was all a mistake. Rage at the thought that maybe, just maybe, they would never regret it. And then, somewhere in that sleepless haze, a thought struck me. A dangerous thought. My parents thought they had all the power. They thought they could kick me out, cut me off, and I would just vanish from their lives like a bad memory. But they had forgotten something. I wasn't powerless, because I knew things. I knew their bank details. I knew their routines. I knew enough about their lives to shake them to the core if I wanted to. The thought scared me at first. It felt too big, too extreme. But the longer I lay there, the more it took root. Why should they get to sit comfortably in that house, sipping coffee, acting like I never existed, while I was out here stripped of everything? No. They needed to feel it. They needed to know what it was like to lose control, to have the ground ripped out from under them. By the time the first light of dawn crept through the blinds, I had made up my mind. I was going to make them pay. When the sun rose that morning, everything inside me felt different. It wasn't hope. It wasn't healing. It was something darker, something sharper. I lay there on my friend's couch, staring at the ceiling, feeling a storm build inside my chest. My parents thought they had won. They thought they had shut the door on me, washed their hands clean, and gone back to sipping their coffee like nothing happened. But the truth was, they had just created something they couldn't control. I remembered the look on my father's face as he told me to leave. Cold, detached, like I was some unwanted tenant instead of his child. And my mother, her voice still echoed in my head. "We've done our part. Now it's your turn." They thought that was the end of the story. But it wasn't. It was the beginning, because they had made one fatal mistake. They underestimated me. You see, my parents weren't careful with their secrets. They treated me like I didn't exist most of the time, like I wasn't paying attention, but I was. I always was. I remembered being 12 years old, sitting quietly at the kitchen table, pretending to do homework while my mom balanced the checkbook. I remembered the way my dad muttered passwords under his breath when he logged into his accounts. Numbers, dates. phrases that meant something only to us, birthdays, anniversaries, my name. I wasn't supposed to notice, but I did. And those memories, those tiny details, came rushing back like puzzle pieces snapping into place. I pulled out my phone. My hands shook, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I typed in the bank's website. The login page stared back at me, simple and clean, daring me to try. I closed my eyes, breathing hard, summoning every scrap of memory I had. And then I typed, username, password, enter. The screen blinked. For a moment, I thought I'd failed. But then, there it was, their account. My parents' money, laid out in neat little numbers, their balance, their transactions, their life digitized and vulnerable. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had been broken and suddenly found the cracks could cut back. But I didn't touch the money, not yet. That would be too easy, too quick. No, I wanted them to feel it. So I went deeper. Security settings, notifications, linked accounts, and then I found it. The option to freeze the account, to lock them out completely. My finger hovered over the button. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would explode. This was it. This was the line. Once I crossed it, there was no going back. I thought about my mother's face when she told me I was on my own. I thought about the way my father didn't even flinch as I walked out the door. I thought about every lonely birthday, every ignored achievement, every time I had wondered if I mattered at all. And then I pressed it. Account frozen. Just like that, their world shifted. They didn't know it yet, but their safety net was gone. Their credit cards, their bills, their precious financial control, slipping through their fingers because of me. I sat there staring at the confirmation screen, my chest rising and falling like I had just run a marathon. A wave of emotions crashed over me, relief, triumph, fear, but above all, satisfaction. They had taken everything from me. Now I was taking something back. For the rest of that day, I couldn't stop checking, refreshing the page, watching as the system confirmed the freeze again and again, like it was reassuring me that yes, this was real. Yes, I had done it. That night, I slept better than I had in years, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't powerless. The first call came 2 days later. I was sitting on my friend's couch, scrolling aimlessly on my phone, when the screen lit up with a familiar number. My mother. For a split second, I froze. Part of me wanted to answer, to hear her voice, to believe maybe, just maybe, she was calling to apologize. But deep down, I already knew. I let it ring out. Then came the second call. This time, my father. Then a third, then a text. Something's wrong with the bank. Call us. I felt a smile curl at the corner of my mouth. The cracks had begun to show. That evening, the messages kept coming. My mother's words grew more frantic with each one. Our cards aren't working. Did you touch something? We can't access our account. I didn't reply. I just watched the panic unfold in real time. Each notification a reminder that they were finally feeling the helplessness they had forced onto me. By the next morning, their tone had shifted. My father's text was short, clipped, almost threatening. If you had anything to do with this, fix it, now. I laughed out loud. For years, that man's voice had made me shrink, made me feel small and powerless. But now, his threats meant nothing. He couldn't bark his way out of this. Meanwhile, the storm inside their house was only growing. I heard about it through neighbors, through whispers. My parents had gone to the grocery store, cart full of food, only to be humiliated at the checkout when their card was declined again and again. My mother's face had gone red, my father's temper had exploded, and they had stormed out, leaving everything behind. Then came the bills, the electricity, the internet, even their mortgage. Each one bounced back unpaid as the freeze I had triggered tightened its grip. And with every passing day, their carefully constructed life began to collapse. I could almost see it in my mind. My father pacing the kitchen, slamming his fist on the counter, demanding answers no one could give. My mother on the phone with the bank, her voice rising higher and higher as each representative told her the same thing. "We're sorry, ma'am, but your account has been temporarily restricted." Restricted. Frozen. Untouchable. Because of me. One night, unable to resist, I walked by the house, just to see. The lights were off earlier than usual. The driveway, once home to my father's shiny car, sat empty. Repossessed, maybe, or sold off in desperation. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of my mother, her face pale and drawn, her hands clutching her phone like a lifeline that wouldn't connect, and my father. He looked smaller somehow, deflated, like the weight of the world had finally settled onto his shoulders. For a moment, a pang of guilt pierced through me. This was my family after all, the people who had raised me, who had given me life. But then I remembered the way they had looked at me on my birthday, the way they had told me to leave without flinching, the way they had turned my 18th year into a day of exile. And the guilt evaporated. They had abandoned me. They had chosen their comfort over my humanity. And now, comfort was the one thing slipping through their fingers. Still, part of me couldn't help but wonder, how far would this go? How long before they broke completely? How long before the cracks turned into collapse? I didn't have to wait long to find out, because within a week, their world wasn't just crumbling. It was on fire. It started with whispers. Neighbors who once smiled politely at my parents now lowered their voices when they passed. The perfect family image my parents had crafted, the nice car, the tidy lawn, the air of superiority, was unraveling in front of everyone, and they hated it. I heard from a friend who still lived nearby that my father had exploded at the hardware store when his card was declined, that my mother had burst into tears at the pharmacy when she couldn't pay for her prescription, that the whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were open conversations about how the Johnsons must be in some kind of trouble. For people like my parents who thrived on appearances, humiliation was a sharper knife than poverty. Bills piled up, utilities cut off one by one. The once warm, glowing house turned darker every night, its windows black, its halls cold. My father tried to pick up extra shifts at work, but without access to his own accounts, even his paycheck was tangled in red tape. My mother sold jewelry, furniture, anything she could, but it was never enough. I didn't need to imagine their downfall anymore. I could see it. One evening, I walked past again. Their front yard, once immaculate, was overgrown. Weeds sprouted through cracks in the driveway, trash bags piled by the curb, uncollected. The house itself looked abandoned. Through the thin curtains, I saw my mother hunched over the kitchen table, papers spread around her like the wreckage of a storm. My father sat with his head in his hands, shoulders slumped. For the first time in my life, they looked human, fragile, breakable, and that scared me. Because instead of satisfaction, instead of triumph, what I felt in that moment was something far more complicated. Part of me wanted to scream at them, "Do you see now? Do you see what it feels like to lose everything?" But another part, the smaller, quieter part, just wanted to walk in, sit down, and be their child again. But I didn't. I kept walking. The next day, the calls started again. Dozens. My phone lit up over and over, their desperation bleeding through every message. "We need your help. Please, just talk to us. We can't live like this." And then, the one that nearly broke me, "We're sorry." 2 words I had waited 18 years to hear. 2 words that landed like a punch to the chest. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to think they finally understood, finally cared. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that the apology wasn't for me. It was for themselves, for the life they had lost, for the comfort that had slipped away, not for the sun they had thrown out. That night, I lay awake on my friend's couch, staring at the ceiling, torn in two. One half of me burned with satisfaction, with a justice I had carved out with my own hands. The other half ached with something softer, something I hated admitting, grief. Because as much as I wanted revenge, as much as I wanted them to suffer, a part of me still longed for parents who would love me. And now, watching them collapse, I realized something that hurt worse than any rejection. Even broken, even desperate, they might never truly change. And yet, I couldn't stop. I had set this in motion, and there was no turning back. Their lives were unraveling, and I was the one pulling the thread. The message came late at night. I was half asleep when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I reached for it lazily, expecting another meaningless notification. But when I saw the name, my chest tightened. Mom. The text was longer this time. Shaky. Raw. We don't know what else to do. Please, we need you. We can't pay the bills. We can't eat. We're sorry for everything. Just please help us. For a long time, I just stared at the screen. My mother, the woman who once looked down at me with disdain, was now begging, and not just begging for comfort, for survival. The next day, I finally picked up one of their calls. The line was quiet at first. Then I heard it. My mother's voice, trembling, breaking. "Sweetheart, please, we've lost everything. We need you." Behind her, my father's voice cut in, weaker than I had ever heard it. "Son, I was wrong. We were wrong. Just help us fix this." I should have felt victorious. I should have smiled, knowing I had turned the tables so completely that the people who once cast me aside were now at my mercy. But instead, my eyes stung. My throat tightened, because I had never heard them like this before. Vulnerable, defenseless, human. I wanted to scream, to ask them where this desperation was when I needed them, where this humility was when I was standing on the porch with tears in my eyes, begging them not to throw me out. But all I could do was listen. My mother sobbed openly now. "I'm so sorry. I don't know why we did what we did. I was scared. I thought pushing you out would make you strong. I thought it was the right thing, but it wasn't. It was cruel." And then my father, my proud, unbending father, choked out words I never thought I'd hear. "I failed you, as a father, as a man. I failed. Please, son, please forgive me." The silence after that was unbearable. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding so hard it hurt. My entire life I had waited for these words, for this moment, and now that it was here, I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to hang up, to let them sit in the ruin they had built for themselves, to remind them that forgiveness wasn't something you could buy, not even with tears, but another part, the broken, bleeding part of me that still longed for parents, wanted to believe them. And that terrified me. I swallowed hard, finally finding my voice. You don't get to just say sorry. You don't get to erase what you did. You kicked me out on my birthday. You abandoned me when I needed you most. On the other end, silence, then more sobbing. "I know," my mother whispered, "and I will regret it until the day I die." My father's voice cracked. "We just want our family back. Please, please, son." Tears slid down my face before I even realized I was crying. I wiped them away angrily, hating the weakness, hating that even after everything, they still had the power to break me. I didn't give them an answer that night. I couldn't. I hung up, my hands trembling, my chest aching with a pain I didn't know how to name. Guilt, anger, love, hate, all tangled together until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. That night, I lay awake for hours, staring into the darkness. My mind replayed their voices, their words over and over like a broken record, and I realized something terrifying. Revenge had given me power, but forgiveness, that was a power I wasn't sure I could handle. Because if I forgave them, what would become of me? For days, I avoided them. Every call, every message, every desperate knock on the locked door of my phone. I silenced it all. But their voices wouldn't leave me. They echoed in my head, a constant replay of words I had longed to hear my entire life. We're sorry. We need you. Please forgive us. And yet, the wound was still there. The image of me standing on the porch that night, suitcase in hand, tears burning down my face, while my parents, the people who promised to love me unconditionally, turned their backs. How do you forgive that? How do you erase the kind of pain that carves scars into your very soul? I didn't know. But life has a cruel way of forcing decisions. It was a Saturday afternoon when I saw them again, not through a window, not in passing, but face to face. I had gone back to the old neighborhood, walking the cracked sidewalk, when I saw them sitting on the porch of what used to be our perfect home. They didn't look like the parents I remembered. My mother's once flawless hair was unkempt, her face pale and drawn, eyes swollen from too many sleepless nights. My father, strong, commanding, untouchable, looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. Shoulders slumped, hands shaking slightly as he stared at the ground. When they noticed me, both froze. Then my mother stood, tears welling instantly. "Sweetheart." Her voice cracked. She took a step forward but stopped, as if afraid I'd run. "You came." My father's eyes glistened, something I never thought I'd witness. "Son," he whispered. Just one word, but it carried the weight of everything left unsaid. I stood there, heart hammering in my chest, torn between running into their arms and walking away forever. Silence stretched, thick and suffocating, until I finally spoke. "Why?" My voice broke, raw. "Why did you do it? Why did you throw me out? On my birthday of all days?" My mother covered her mouth, sobbing. My father looked down, ashamed. "We thought we were teaching you strength," he said quietly. "We thought if we pushed you, you'd grow. But it wasn't strength we gave you, it was pain, and we'll regret that for the rest of our lives." Tears blurred my vision. I hated them for what they'd done, but I hated myself more for still wanting their love. My mother reached out a trembling hand. "Please, come home. Let us try again. We don't care about the money, the house, the things. We just want you." For a moment, time froze. I saw two futures stretched before me. In one, I turned away, leaving them to crumble in the ruins of their choices. In the other, I stepped forward, choosing forgiveness, risking my heart all over again. Neither path promised peace, but standing there, staring into the tear-streaked faces of the people who had given me life, I realized something. Revenge had run its course. I had made them feel the emptiness they once forced on me. I had broken them the way they had broken me. And yet, watching them now, shattered and pleading, I felt no triumph, only exhaustion, only grief, because hate is heavy, and I was tired of carrying it. With a shaky breath, I whispered, "I don't know if I can ever forgive you, not fully, not yet, but I don't want to hate you anymore." My mother collapsed into sobs. My father's lips trembled as he nodded, eyes shining. "That's enough," he whispered. "That's more than we deserve." Slowly, hesitantly, I stepped forward. My mother's arms wrapped around me first, desperate, clinging. Then my father's, strong yet trembling, and for the first time in years, I was held by both of them. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't healing overnight, but it was something. And in that broken embrace, I realized the truth. Revenge had given me power. Forgiveness, partial, fragile, imperfect forgiveness, gave me freedom. As the sun dipped behind the house that had once been my prison and my home, I finally let myself cry, not from anger, not from triumph, but from release, because after everything, after all the pain and all the collapse, I was free.